Rhea, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here, John. Thank you.
Yeah, so can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. So my name is Rhea Campbell. I'm an investor. I'm located downtown Chicago. I spent the last 22 years in commercial real estate doing tenant representation. Prior to that, I actually worked in luxury hotels. So I was with Four Seasons Hotels and Resorts and with Fairmont Hotels and Resorts right out of college. I was in both operations and in sales. And I made a move I'm a Canadian. I made a move from Canada to the United States thinking that was going to inject some new energy into my career. And I realized very quickly after I arrived in Chicago that that's not what I needed. I actually needed to switch careers. And so I spent the last 22 years in commercial real estate. At the same time, though, my husband and I started a concierge medicine practice. My husband's a physician back in 2015, and we grew that company to 5 locations and just recently exited and sold the company to private equity. So that was pretty exciting to go through that process. But simultaneous to that, in 2023, I sort of looked around and thought, I've been actively working on tenant representation and real estate consulting, commercial real estate consulting, but I hadn't actually been acquiring assets myself, right? And I thought, well, wait a second, that like I have active income, not passive income. And so I switched gears. I stepped down from tenant representation and decided to build my own portfolio. And so I found an awesome group of people, one of whom is you, to surround myself with and to learn a lot of creative ways to purchase assets, to structure deals, and started buying, lending, borrowing, and building. And so I'm 2 years into kind of that journey, and it's been amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you and I first met, you were in the process of just meeting as many people as you possibly could. And that time you were still running your business. I mean, where did you find the time to meet? Was it 3 people every single day?
Yeah. Well, let's see. I have a huge amount of energy. I wake up, my husband calls me the whirling dervish, like
Mm.
my eyes open and I am like, it's like 5 shots of espresso. I have naturally have a huge amount of energy and it needs to be focused in the right direction to be used for good, not for evil. And um, so look, I don't feel like I work. I haven't worked in 22 years. I get to wake up every day and do things that I love to do. So that's the way I have felt really for 22 years.
Mm.
And so I don't really watch TV. I use every moment of every day to work, talk to people, create, ideate, and learn. But that's like I'm doing what I love.
Mhm.
When I go to bed at night and I go to bed relatively early, I get into bed, I have my phone and I'm either listening to podcasts and learning, or I'm on my social channels, connecting, communicating with people. And then I'm, thinking about ways that I can, connect with them or work with them or do things with them or lend to them or borrow from
Mhm.
them or whatever the case may be. So it's just the way I'm wired, right? I don't sit on a beach. I don't, vacations are usually trips. They're
Uh-huh.
educational trips. Like
Yeah,
there's a morning activity, there's an afternoon activity, then there's a
Mm.
dinner.
Right,
And in between, I'm working. There are,
right.
my computer's with me and I do work. So that's how I put a lot in. I have a lot of systems. I use AI for a lot, and anything
Mm.
we do more than once, we systematize.
Yeah, that's huge because when I first got started, it was just see house, buy house, collect rent, and then got overwhelmed and created a mess, realized I didn't have the systems in place. And so definitely something that I want to get into later. But going back to your 5 location medical concierge business, was the exit always, did you always plan to sell to private equity or did it just kind of happen?
Well, no, not necessarily. So the first 3 years, it was, obviously building, getting to profitability. And that was, every day you're waking up thinking like, okay, like, are we going to make it? It,
Mhm.
was challenging. And then once we got to profitable and we, had multiple locations, we start and we saw the opportunity in the market. The
Mhm.
plan really at that point was to raise our first round of capital and then to scale the company ourselves. And as we really looked at the landscape, we knew that we needed to have the right capital partner, beside us in our court. And we had a challenge, right? Finding the right capital partner,
Hmm.
um, what we call aligned, right? Vision and mission aligned,
Yeah.
because, depending on the capital partner, they may want you to grow really fast. They may want you to change the model. My husband feels very strongly about the model that we have. He's the chief medical officer. So, his mission is to serve people, to care for people. I was the business side of it. So looking at, making sure we're making enough money. Um, and so initially our plan was to raise our first round of capital. And then after COVID hit and we started to raise capital, we didn't have the kind of capital partners at the table that we felt like we needed to have. So we stopped our capital raise. And then the truth is the private equity company kind of came out of the blue. Um,
Uh,
they approached us. They had purchased another company very much like ours in the Colorado market. And we were the third acquisition in their fund. And we had a meeting with them. They were vision and mission aligned. They understood what we were doing and they wanted to actually grow our model. They didn't want to
okay.
change it. They weren't looking for, shifting it. They wanted to actually grow the model that we had already built. And so that was very attractive to us. But at the same time, we knew we needed a deeper bench, right? It was the Alex and Rhea show. We have our doctors, we have our medical assistants, we have our staff, but it's a heavy lift, right?
Hmm.
And so
Yeah.
we needed a deeper bench. We needed more leadership. And we felt like they brought a really great, amazing team to the table. And so we sold controlling interest. But with a private equity sale, it's not a clean sale.
Hmm.
If anybody here doesn't understand how this works, you don't typically sell and walk away, right? It's not a clean sale.
Right.
You're selling a certain interest in the company. And typically that's structured in a variety of ways, but the way that ours was structured was there's a upfront cash transfer. You try to limit
Hmm.
how much cash because the government's going to take a huge
Yeah.
amount of it, right?
Right.
And then there's rollover equity. So if you continue to believe in what it is that you've built and the larger purpose of this company, right? Because remember,
Hmm.
we were the third acquisition,
Right.
you roll over equity. So now you own a piece of the larger company and you have a cash transfer. But then you have this, what's called an earnout. You have multiple additional layers of unlocking both cash and equity in the larger company. And they do that because they don't want you to walk away. They
Right.
need you to continue to participate in the growth of the company. So I managed to negotiate just a consulting agreement. I'm just a
Mhm.
consultant. My
Yeah.
husband, though, is on full-blown lockup.
Oh, gotcha. So it's like a phased approach. Is there any exit for him after a certain number of years?
December 31st, 2026.
Oh, okay. So he's got almost 2 years left.
We know the exact date.
Is he excited to get out and do something else or?
Yeah, you don't have to leave, right?
Mm,
That's just
yeah.
when you will have unlocked all
Oh,
of the additional, right, funds
gotcha.
that are
Hmm.
available in the sale. And then
Yeah.
at that point, if you're still adding value and you really love what you do, depending on where you are and the company is growing in the direction, he can still participate and, would be welcome to participate. Um, so we'll see. I mean, who knows, right?
Yeah. Okay. I'm glad you explained that to me because I know that there's always kind of carryover, but then my biggest question was like how do you find someone to sell? But they kind of approached you similar to what we do in real estate, right?
Yeah. And in
Yeah.
fact, these are funds, right? It's a private
Mhm.
equity fund. It's a fund that is specifically created to acquire these kinds of companies and to roll them up and
Yeah.
then to either sell to another fund, right? So you can do
Yeah.
a lateral or you can IPO or you
Mhm.
can sell to a strategic, right? There's a variety of exits when somebody, rolls up into one particular fund. This fund, I think, was a $500 million fund. I forget the size of the fund. It's called
Mhm.
Advantage Fund One. But when you come in as the third um, acquired company, you're in
Mhm.
on the ground floor. So your
Yeah.
equity that rolls over, right,
Yeah.
is in on the ground floor. So for me, when I structured the deal, I'm like, I want to roll as much as I can
Mhm.
into equity. But they only let you roll a certain amount into equity because, right, they don't want to dilute
Right.
what's already in there, and they make you take a certain amount in cash. And I am a real estate professional, so I don't want cash.
Right.
I don't,
Yeah.
I mean, cash is a problem because then I have this huge taxable event.
And is there a way to 1031 from one business to another?
I don't know. What I did, I'll tell you, this was a real tax advantage. So I
Mhm.
looked at how much money, right, I had to take in cash. And I immediately, as we started negotiating the deal, I immediately started looking at real estate opportunities. How do I place that and get the cost segregation bonus depreciation? Because
Mhm.
I'm a married, file jointly income with my husband,
Mhm.
right? So I had to immediately start planning to push some of that money into hard assets
Yeah.
and do cost segs to write down my income. And I did a really good job, but I still have like a chunk that I didn't manage to, to completely write down.
Right. But can you do that through a fund, or did you have to own those assets outside of a fund?
You can LP, like you can, some are LP and some I'm in as an LP, some I just put a huge amount of my own money into, like
Mhm.
the hotel in
Yeah.
Dover, Vermont.
Hmm.
I'm the single largest LP in that fund, in that project.
Right.
Um, Others I just bought outright, right? Because you actually have to have, you don't actually have to use your own money in order
Mhm.
to actually benefit from the depreciation. But I had a
Right.
lot of it and
Right.
I had to
Hmm.
place it.
Right.
So, but I started, I knew this was coming in by about May of last year. Actually, it was about April. I knew we were going to close at some
Hmm.
point, right? Because we
Yeah.
were already through all the due diligence. We had basically come to terms, and now we were just doing, the sort of wrapping up. It's very complicated when you sell to private equity. I mean, it's months and months and months. It's an entire data room. It's forensic accounting. It's
Mhm.
every benefit. I mean, it's a massive lift.
Right.
But once you get close enough to the finish line, you know you're going to close, or at least you're closer to the notion of closing. And once I was closer to the notion of closing, I was like, okay, now I got to start lining up exactly where I put that money on the day the funds flow into the bank accounts.
Right. It's a fun problem to have.
But let me be honest with you. um, it is a problem.
Mm.
It, you don't know this until you get here. So, and
Right.
this is an interesting concept. Look, my husband and I have done well. I'm mid 50s, right? With commercial real estate. I've done very well in the last 22 years. My husband's a physician. We run our own business. For 22 years prior to that, he was the head of the primary care group at the University of Chicago. We do well. And so we do have excess money, but we've not had that kind of excess money. So you
Right.
don't actually know, right? I just want to say this out loud. You
Mm.
don't know what happens when you actually get to a place where you have this huge amount of excess money and you don't realize that that actually is a problem. It's a problem
Mm.
because the government's going to take that away from you. So if
Right.
you don't plan properly,
Hmm.
well in advance of this kind of funds flow, you're going to get hurt really bad on taxes. So I was also hiring a tax strategist at exactly the same time because I knew it was
Hmm.
coming.
Yeah.
Um, but of course, this plays into mindset. I know you're going to ask a question about that, but
Yeah.
I'm cheap.
Mm.
And I paying $15,000 for a tax strategist was like, wow, do I really need to do that?
Right.
Which now I think is like ridiculous. Why was I questioning that? Because the tax strategist that we have now is amazing. And he's like really helping keep far more than $15,000 in our own pockets and not pay to the government. But because of my cheap mindset, I was having a hard time pulling the trigger on spending $15,000 on a tax strategist.
So how did you get over it?
Well, all right. So I struggle every day. So
Mm.
look, my dad and mom Depression era babies. My dad was the CEO of a drug company in Canada. They don't make money like they do here in CEOs of drug companies in the United States. So let me just be
Uh-huh.
clear on, they do very well, but not like they do in the US.
Right.
And and look, I grew up with parents who, you save your money, you put it away, you work for retirement. They weren't entrepreneurs, they were successful, but that's how they, that's how that's the mindset that I grew up in.
Mhm.
And so I had the same mindset, right? Oh, like we put our money away and we save and we are somewhat frugal, right? That's like I the idea of like spending money to make money was not something I was super comfortable with. And I still struggle with that, but what helped me was actually getting around a group of people like you, like the people in our investment group, like some of the mentorships and masterminds that I've joined, and realizing that I had a mindset that was based on kind of gen pop, general population,
Yeah.
right? Like that's gen pop. And there's nothing wrong with gen pop, except that when I get in rooms with people that are doing things differently and leveling up and have a, a change in their mindset, and I watch them be successful and make changes, it gives me the confidence to know that it like, okay, I can do this. So when that thinking, that frugal thinking, look, I'm still frugal.
Hmm.
I'm still smart with my money, right?
Right.
I don't want to be crazy, but I know it takes money to make money. And I'm much more comfortable swinging it around. Listen, I
Hmm.
was swinging it around before we sold the company in
Yeah.
ways that sometimes made me a little uncomfortable because I wasn't used to it. Now that I sold the company right now, it's a little different because like there's a lot more wiggle room.
Yeah.
Um, but there are still times where I'm like, well, I mean, why would I spend that money? And then I stop myself and I'm like, oh, there's my old thinking.
Yeah.
So, like, I'll just give you an example. There's this event that some really cool people are going to. And I was thinking, I don't get on a plane and fly all the way there. It's going to cost money. And I was like, of course I'm going to get on a plane and I'm going to fly all the way there. And I'm going to
Hmm.
spend the 2 days there because the people that I'm going to meet and the conversations and the things that we're going to do are going to propel me and my business and my thinking forward. And so this is stuff that I engage in and want to engage in regularly.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest things is trying getting over the fact that I'm getting on a plane and I'm paying to be at this event to just go and talk to people where nothing's guaranteed. But then just being around people like fund managers, hedge fund people, VCs, right? It's like a completely different world.
Completely different world.
Yeah.
And it's not a world that I come from, right? It's not a world that you come from, but there's a certain magic that happens when you're having this natural conversation with people.
Yeah.
You're able to build some rapport in a relationship. Like the people that I've met, I may not have anything to bring to them, and they may not have anything to bring to me when we meet each other. And
Right.
then a year later, I remember, oh, wait a minute. I know someone who knows someone who does that. And I'm able to kind of put two and two together. Sometimes I'm helping other people, sometimes it works out that I'm helping myself, but
Mhm.
I've done it enough and it's happened enough that I now know, oh yeah, this is what I need to do. Continue to build relationships, like real relationships with people.
Right. Yeah, I think when you and I met, I had nothing to offer you, and there was just no way that we could work together. And then all of a sudden, there comes an opportunity where my mom has to move some money, and obviously, I just went to you to deploy it.
Yeah. And it's like that's the magic, right? It just
Mm.
like out of nowhere, it's like, hey, Rhea, my mom has some money to deploy. Do you have any? I do.
Mm.
Amazing. And your mom is like one of my lenders,
Yeah,
right? And that just
yeah,
came out of the blue. I've had, I've lent to people like that. I've borrowed from people like that. I've partnered with people. And it's happened enough times organically now that I know that there's just like something in the universe that just makes those things happen. I don't question it. I just know it happens.
yeah, absolutely. Um, so going back to when we first met, I think you were just still getting started and still learning about how to own your own assets. And then all of a sudden, I see you just picking up short-term rental after short-term rental. Like, how do you go from, okay, this is what I'm going to do to immediately start buying a bunch of houses?
I just made it up. So, so Jonathan, oh, wow. Okay, let's see. So I own 9 sh short-term rental, long-term rentals now,
Hmm.
and a 20-room hotel. And
Hmm.
I don't know how many acres of land, 20 acres, 2 acres, 15 acres. I have 6 notes where we bought land, we sold it on seller finance. So we have notes
Hmm.
coming in,
Yeah.
and I'm about to buy a 34 unit mobile home park. And I have I lent 1.5 million, $1.2 million in the last 12 months. And and the return was 1.7 million. Right. So like I made $400,000 on that,
Right.
like crazy money.
Yeah.
Um, so my avatar is all of them. I'm a weirdo like that.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
I'm a visionary, I'm an integrator, I'm a connector, I'm a lender, I'm a borrower. I've realized, like, when they said, like, well, you should find your avatar and figure out where you fit. I'm like, I
Yeah.
don't know, where do I fit? Like, I want to do all of it. And by the way, I'm an action taker.
Hmm.
I have a very high tolerance for risk if it's my own money. I have a
Yeah.
very low tolerance for risk when it's other people's money because I get nervous because
Hmm.
I don't ever want to let anybody down. So what I used to do in the beginning is I used to keep liquid money on the side, and all of the deals that I got into, I used private money lenders, but I always
Hmm.
kept money on the side so that if something happened, I could cash them out. It was my safety blanket.
Yeah.
I held my safety blanket. And then I heard Pace, who's actually one of our mentors in real estate. I heard him talking about, like, I'm trying to get my money out all the time. I should all be out. And I'm thinking, God, he's right, because if it's sitting there, it's actually losing money.
Right.
But again, I was fearful. What if I make a mistake? What if something happens? But I had done enough deals at that point to know, across a basket of deals, diversifying your risk,
Mhm.
you're going to have some that don't go well. You're going to have some that go incredibly well, and you're going to have everything in between. And if
Mhm.
you're like really rigorous about your underwriting, really rigorous and careful about what you're doing, and you're doing enough, and it's not all concentrated in one area, like I'm not doing all wraps, I'm not doing all STRs, right? If
Mhm.
one segment falls apart, like short-term rentals in Cape Coral did not do well over the summer. And
Right.
so every month, right, it was like, ooh, we got to come up with a mortgage payment. But now my short-term rentals are completely full in the winter months. Okay. So like got to have enough wiggle room, right, for that
Mhm.
money so that you're actually able to pay the mortgage. And what I got comfortable with was it's all going to be okay. Like the whole world, if the zombie apocalypse happens tomorrow, we're
Mhm.
all in trouble. And
Right.
right, it's
Yeah.
okay because
Mhm.
nobody's going to be worried about the world's falling apart. Nobody's worried about whether their loans are going bad. The zombies are coming for us.
Right.
So that's the way I think about it now. And I recognize, like, there's an ebb and flow to this. And I'm okay with that. But I've had to get comfortable. So what I do now is, if it's a riskier deal, I use my own money. I know Pace is going to say, oh, you're using your own money. I do. I just use my own deal. I might close in all cash in my
Mhm.
own money. And then I'm going to look at, as we get closer to I'm mostly talking about land in this case, as we
Mhm.
get closer to like selling it, I might take myself out and bring a private money lender in, because now I'm getting closer to selling it and I sort of know exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
Um, so I jumped in, I did a little bit of everything and really diversified, which actually worked out well for me
Mhm.
because I am fully diversified. I have a ton of things going on. But the problem that created, John, as you probably know, is like, whoa, chaos. Like
Right.
so many, and I didn't have the team, right? I have a team now. I have a CFO who does all the underwriting. We have 2 people that work under him, Kafil and Aline. We have Mike, my executive assistant. I have Sunshine, who does project management. I have my entire land team. I've got Jen, Giselle, and Alex, right? I got an entire team. I got an army of people that can do the daily work so
Mhm.
that I can do the things that actually are like higher value. But that goes back to, wow, I'm spending a lot of money on wages
Right.
right? But I
Yeah.
had to get comfortable, like, okay, I'm going to have to, my margins are going to slip as I build my team, but that's part of, and I had to like remember, like when I was building Imagine MD, like we had to do the same thing. We were drawing down for 3 years, our personal
Right.
money.
Hmm.
Like, right, this is the same thing. You're building a business. You're going to draw down to draw back to get to the next level.
Yeah. So then I guess it comes down to whether you're going to do it yourself and save that money, or if you're going to spend the money, build the team first. Now, when you're building the team, like what do you look for in, I guess, in the overall, how do you build a team?
Yeah. Oof. That you look, I'll be honest with you, in my 34 years of work, that has been the single hardest thing I've ever done. It's not actually making money. That's
Mhm.
actually not that hard. Teach a woman to fish and she'll never go hungry. Like I know how to fish. Like the
Mhm.
zombies can come for me and my family's going to be okay. I'm going to put a little backpack on and we are going to survive.
Right.
The hardest thing to do is actually building a team that are all in one boat rowing in the same direction. So there are natural leaders. Um, I'm not a natural leader. I don't actually like to teach. I'm not very good at it. I'm a doer. I'm
Mhm.
really good at doing. And I'm really good at ideating and creating this strategy, but then I'm running so fast toward that goal that it's
Right.
hard for people to keep up with me. So um, what I so one of the things that I had to do 2 years ago is I had to learn how to let go, stop controlling the process, and just lead with the outcome in mind. So I call it transformational leadership. What I do now is I explain to my team, here's what I want the outcome to be, and I want you guys to create the steps to get there. So I'm going to ideate, right? I'm going to wake up in the morning, 4 in the morning, with this crazy idea. Oh, I got a crazy idea. Okay, and I will start to put some of those ideas together. And then I will explain to the team, here's what I want the outcome to be, and go do it. And then they have the control to go and put those pieces in place. And then they check in, they bring it back to me, checking in on the project. And then the last 10 or 15% is typically me again, because I'm sort of, it's like silver, you're banging it into shape, right?
Mhm.
Putting the
Yeah.
finishing touch. So it's like the first 10 or 15%, the last 10 or 15%. But the rest of it, the actual meat, they're doing. And I'm just checking in with them periodically. But you know what that means? That means that the control freak, if anyone is listening to this and you are I am a control freak, right?
Mhm.
I have a little OCD. I have a real problem letting go of things. Um, if you text me, I have a real problem. Like I can't not text you back. So part of the problem is I get outreach by a lot of people and I
Right.
feel bad if I don't answer them. So I'm having to learn how to let go and let other people do the work, even if it's not the way you would do it. It's maybe not going to be as good as you do it, but is it good enough? Right? Accepting good enough in some areas is really challenging for me. Good enough while we're putting it together, and then I get the last 10 or 15% and I make it great. I make it perfect. And I have to I have to believe that that's okay. It's
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah. Because there's so many things that you have going on. Like, how do you have the time to go and finish that 10 to 15% in each one of those realms?
So we have spent a huge amount of time building systems. So
Mm.
I build the system, right?
Hmm.
If we do it more than once, we build a system. So we have an SOPs, right? Standard,
Right.
right? We
Hmm.
use AI in everything. I have custom GPTs for a
Hmm.
variety of different voices, verticals. My team has custom GPTs. They have assistants that they've built, right? Because I mean, and sometimes I've built them and I've shared them. You know, you can share custom GPTs with people.
Yeah.
I
Hmm.
also use the projects section of ChatGPT
Hmm.
to make sure that I'm building upon kind of projects and themes, so I can
Yeah.
always go back to it. And then, like, let me give you an example. One of the projects that we're working on is we have all of the companies, we're bringing all of our companies together that roll up into Go High Level. And so like my fund, rheacampbell.com, which is like my lending entity, and then my land business, and then I'm writing a book, and then the
Hmm.
book. So let's say you come to me and you end up uh you chat with me and I send you a link and you automatically get to rheacampbell.com because you want to borrow money.
Hmm.
There's an intake form. It goes right into Go High Level. It automated, it's all automated. It spits. Now it's not done yet. We hired a team in India. They're doing the work. My team is running all of this, putting it all together because I ideated and they're putting it all together with the team, all the websites, etc. And then the last 15%, which is actually I'm the one who's writing all the copy. Now they put in some placeholders for the copy of the website, but it's not my
Yeah.
voice. It needs
Right.
to be my voice.
Right.
I'm the one who's the last 15%. I'm working on the last 15% for Decafund right now. But all of this will then run. So let's say you reach out to me, it'll drop in. You can eventually you can schedule a call if there's a call that's needed, but it's not with me. It's actually going to be with the lending team who then goes over everything that's in there. It either meets our criteria or it doesn't. The idea is that when we have chat assistants that we are plugging in, AI assistants that will be uploaded with FAQs, so they
Hmm.
can actually, it'll look like Rhea or someone from her team is answering you. Hi, John, great to hear from you. Awesome to hear about your fix and flip property in Atlanta, Georgia. Let's have a discussion. Here's the link, fill in the form. You're going to think like, oh, there's somebody on the other end. It's going to be a chat assistant,
Yeah.
right? There's lots of ways that you could automate your systems, either through Zapier or Make, right?
Hmm.
Make is you can connect all these different AIs to it.
Yeah.
Like, again, we're just looking at everything that we do. Can we create a system around it? And if we can, the problem is, John, this stuff is all work. Like it all takes work. So,
Yeah.
you're going to build an AI assistant? Sure. Be prepared because there's front end work for back end freedom.
Hmm.
So I always think about that. Yeah, it's going to be a heavy lift. Yeah, okay. So we got to like find the time to do, create the the front end of it because it's going to give us freedom on the back end. And we've already bought a whole bunch of freedom.
Right.
Dan Martell's book, which is Buy Back Your Time,
Yep.
thought it was
Hmm.
amazing. It was like really spoke to me because I'm a systems girl.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh yeah, absolutely. Now there's a couple of things that he says in there. Like there's some things that I do that I probably shouldn't do, but I love to do them. So I'm not going to give them up. That's my zone of genius. I enjoy doing those things. So I'm
Right.
not going to give them up, even though my time might be better spent somewhere else, because I'm doing these things because I love them. Like I
Right.
want to wake up and enjoy my day.
Hmm.
So I'm still going to do things that maybe don't make me the most amount of money, but do allow me to feel fulfilled. So I'm looking for how do I advance the team so that I can pay my team more money and so that we all make more money because that's important. They can feed their families and,
Hmm.
everybody can thrive. But the second thing is I want to make sure that I'm really enjoying what I'm doing because I'm not doing this just for money.
Yeah, and that's one of the most important things is if you like it, if you like doing it, great. But if you don't, then have someone else do it.
Someone else do it. That's right. So
Yeah.
I do some low value things that I
Mhm.
actually like doing.
What are some low value things that you like doing?
I like answering my own email. I answer all of my own email. I tried to farm that out to my
Hmm.
assistant,
Yeah.
and I like answering my own email. I
Yeah.
like there's a certain um I can keep my pulse on what's going on, and
Hmm.
I enjoy responding to people.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, because you were very, remember it was the night before Squad Up started, and you were just at the bar talking to people, and it was late. I was exhausted. I was ready to go home, and then we got to meet each other face to face, and you said you were exhausted, but you just still had so much energy.
I was
Yeah.
exhausted.
Um, But yeah, okay. So then a lot of systems, GPTs. Yeah, I'm using GPTs as well, and finally understanding how to build my own and
Yeah.
using projects. Um, so you've done a lot of different things, and now you're getting into mobile home parks. So what is it about mobile home parks that you like?
Yeah. Well, this deal that I'm working on right now, knock on wood that it
Mm,
closes. We're not there yet. It's the craziest deal. I don't know if it's the craziest deal either, but it's pretty crazy. And I'm hoping that Pace is actually going to talk about this because
mm,
the way that we're putting this together is like super fun. Like there's a lot of moving parts to it. But what happened was I saw this deal. Well, there was a way for me to actually get involved in this. And I saw the deal and I thought, oh, I like the deal, but I needed to underwrite it myself. Like I don't usually accept anybody else's underwriting. I'll look at other people's underwriting, but then I usually
mm,
want to give it to my team and underwrite it.
right.
And looked at the deal and thought, wow, I really like it, right? It's got good cash flow, it's got good return, stable in an area that's growing, that has, good demand. So like it sort of checked all of those boxes. I'd never done a mobile home park, but I need depreciation. I need to be
Hmm.
in deals for depreciation.
Right.
Great depreciation because there's some tenant-owned homes, but there are some park-owned homes. Park-owned homes have great depreciation because you've actually got the mobile home itself, which
Right.
it's got some shorter lifespan components to it that you can accelerate.
Hmm.
So I really like the asset from a depreciation perspective, but when I looked at the deal, it also has some really good cash flow and some equity multiple on the back end. But then there's this crazy story that goes along with it that actually made me sort of take another look at this. And then I started to dig deeper. So one of the things that happened when I came into sub two, I was like, people talk about like find your why. I was like, I don't like, what's my why? I don't know. Like, I like making money. I like doing deals. I like connecting with people. Like, what's my why? I don't know what my why is.
Hmm.
I just like being busy. And I've been sort of chewing on that. Like, what's my why? Like, I don't know what my why is. What's my why? I mean, my family, like, it's very vague. Like, yeah, I
Hmm.
love my family. Yeah, I like being busy. But one of the things that I know about myself, I love to help the underdog. I always have, because I have a very big voice and I'm very comfortable putting myself out there. I'm an aggressive personality. And so I've always loved to help the underdog, somebody who doesn't have a big voice, somebody who maybe doesn't have as much. I've all my life been like that, felt this desire, this need, this want to help people that don't have maybe what I have, right? Whether it be a voice, whether it be, desire, ability, whatever. And I love bringing people along with me. That's really fun, right? Hey, let me show you how you can make money. Let me show you how you can do this. I really enjoy that. I don't enjoy teaching. I do enjoy bringing people along to sit alongside me and kind of watch, because then you feel like, oh, like I can do this.
Right.
So as I was looking at the mobile home park, I heard people talking about workforce housing, right? That's hard for Americans, even Canadians, right, to get into home ownership. And I was like, wow, right. Like, okay. Then I bought this lovely hotel and we, turned it into a beautiful hotel. And it really is expensive and not the average American cannot go and stay there. And so while that's a great investment, does it solve any systemic problem in the United States? No. Rich people can go to a beautiful hotel, great,
Right.
right? And it's a good investment, great. But as I was looking at the mobile home park and I was doing some investigation into kind of what the housing crisis in America and some of those issues, I was like, this is a great investment. There are people that can come along and I can turn these kinds of projects into beautiful communities for people who don't have very much money. And they can have, right, because mobile home parks tend to look really crummy. They're nobody's put a lot of money into them. Like you can buy a crummy looking mobile home park. You can put in some plantings and some flowers. You can put in great lighting. You can make it safe and clean and affordable. You can bump up rents just a little bit. So you can bump up the NOI. You can make the tenant owned homes or the park owned homes a little nicer. You can elevate them a little bit. And you can create this beautiful, safe, you can bring in clubhouses, you can create parks, you can have playgrounds. Like I
Hmm.
can do all these cool things in an asset class that is super affordable for the average American who cannot have a path to home ownership. So it's like, wow. And I like creating cool spaces. And I
Mhm.
know it's not expensive and it's not hard. You just have to have somebody that cares. And so when I looked at that, I was like, maybe that's where I can really add some value. So this is the first mobile home park. And I'm actually seriously considering, like, is that my asset class? Not solely, but
Right.
because you can buy them creatively. Mom
Mhm.
and pop, silver haired, they want out. They've owned them for 25 years. They're in disrepair. They don't want to put any money into it, and they don't know how to get out of this tired asset park.
Right.
Well, I can give them a path to get out. They want to sell it on seller finance. We take over the mortgage sub two with a hybrid seller finance piece to it, and they can go and retire, and we can take it over, and we can plug a little money, and we can bump up the rents a little bit, right? Doesn't have to be a huge amount, but a little bit, because we do need, I'm looking for areas where there can be a little bit of forced appreciation, but I can make it pretty and safe and clean. And like, you can do this for not a huge amount of money.
Yeah, I've looked into mobile home parks and RV parks just because there's a lot of potential in this asset class, and there's a lot of people that I think there are going to be less mobile home parks in 10 years than there are today just because of zoning and all these different issues. So there's a lot of upside.
There's a lot of upside to the investor. And then there's a lot of upside that you can create in these communities, right?
Yeah.
We like the idea of creating a safe, clean, community-oriented environment for a class of people that have a very hard time having a path to home ownership. You can do good and do well.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Well, we are running out of time. I do want to ask, how can people reach out to you and how can people work with you?
Yeah. So Instagram is my preferred method of communication. It's Rhea Campbell _ORD, which is the call
Hmm.
sign for the Chicago airport.
Hmm.
um, that's the best way to reach out to me and to connect with me. And I'll tell you what I'm always looking for. I'm always looking for people that want to be capital partners. I'm looking for people that have awesome deals. They don't quite know how to structure them. What I've learned about myself is that I am a deal architect. I have a very creative mind. I love putting the puzzle pieces together in very unique and interesting ways. I read contracts for a living. I have for 22 years, so I could write an operating agreement, maybe just as well, if not better, than sometimes the attorney can.
Hmm.
So those are the ways that I can really help. If somebody has a fantastic deal and they're not quite sure, and I have an entire team that does underwriting, right? Every single line item. So if they don't quite know what they've got there, they can reach out to me and I can take a look at it and let them know, yeah, this is a great deal. And then they can be part of the transaction as we purchase it, improve it, either sell it off or keep it for cash flow.
Amazing. Yeah, that would be, I know a lot of people that need help with that. I mean, I still need help with that.
We all
Um,
do.
so again, thank you for your time and it was a pleasure. Thank you so much for telling us about your story as well.
John, you're amazing. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you. When I first, everyone that I've met in this, in the investing community has just been really remarkable. And I'm so grateful for the friendships that I get to make, which one of them is you. So thank you for having me and thank you for being part of my world.
Thank you, Ria.